Good morning, everyone. My name is Judy Blake, and I am the Leadership and Advocacy Coordinator for Family to Family Network. I'd like to welcome you all today to another Wednesday training, and it is December 16th. I want to introduce my wonderful, amazing, incredible bilingual colleague, Christina Zavala.
Hello, everybody. Hola.
Could not do my job without her. And I also want to welcome Michael Conteh, who's looking just uber tropical in that background, even though it is a picture, he looks great. So a couple of housekeeping notes. Please write your questions in the chat box. Christina and I will be monitoring that. Michael is going to present for about, 30, 35, 40 minutes. And then we will answer your questions. Please remember that this is a really safe space. So no question is silly. No question is stupid. We want everyone to ask what they feel comfortable asking. If you don't feel comfortable letting everyone know, just send it privately to Christina or myself, and we'll just say, someone asked, because some people don't like to ask questions in public, and we do understand that. So we are very happy to have Michael Conteh with us. He is a BCBA, and he has a long history, which he reminded me of, with Family to Family Network. And he actually presented at one of our in-person conferences 10 years ago. So we love having Michael back, and hopefully it will not be another 10-year hiatus, Michael.
Sooner, much sooner.
Yes, we want to have you back again. And one of the reasons that I really chose having him was because there is no question that this year has been beyond challenging for all of us in so many ways. And, I always used to say that everyone knows someone with a disability. Well, now it's everyone knows someone who has been impacted by COVID. And it is a very, very challenging time. If you are a parent, if you're a teacher, it doesn't matter your journey. We are all having challenging times. So I thought Michael could offer some suggestions, some tips, and with winter break coming up, that's a really difficult time for parents. I know in my own personal life, just so you know, I'm the single parent. I have a 29-year-old son, and I also have a 25-year-old son. My 25-year-old has autism and other co-occurring disabilities. So again, I don't claim to know how every parent feels, but I have a fairly good idea. And I thought we could all use some guidance. So we welcome Michael. Thank you so much. If you want to go ahead and share your screen. And
absolutely,
that would be great. And thank you all so much for joining us.
All right. Thank you so much, Judy. And
so Michael, go back to presenter view like you did before. Yes, there you go. Love the horses. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, Judy, Christina, Family Network, for allowing me to do this talk. Thank you for taking the time out. I know there's a lot of things to be done, and so I will try to add some things that you can take away that'll have some benefit. And I like our group, and so definitely start to think about your Q&A questions. We get a chance to kind of answer some good stuff in that process. So as I begin, this is what I think most of us have been doing in 2020. This is the balance act that it feels like most of us have. And it's been tough. I don't want to go into all the different details. I think we're all watching the same movie. So I don't have to demonstrate it for you. But, I'm going to cover a couple of simple aspects even going into the talk, because I think they're really important on how we need to kind of move forward society-wise, working with your child, just kind of pushing all that forward. So just a little bit about me to know where I'm coming from. I am a board certified behavior analyst. I used to run a company here in Houston for 13 years, got fairly large. So in about 20 years of working with folks, I've worked with over 1,000 kids of all different disabilities with a heavy emphasis on the autism spectrum. So I work with kids as young as 13 months, and my oldest is 42. But especially a lot of those kids, the middle school, all the education school years, I have lots of experience. And I am one of the few people that not only am I a behavior analyst, but I am also a certified coach. And so I'm starting to get a lot into behavioral wellness and kind of merging the tools of behavior analysis, but really helping people with their wellness. All right, so I'm gonna start with 4 key principles just to kind of start to really take into what we're gonna get out of setting up a good game plan, because they're human universals. And I think the more that we try to understand the simplicities of who we are as humans, I think it really helps us to kind of know what we can and are not able to do. So principle number 1 is the importance of positive practice. So one of the simplest things when you look at any human being is that we, in most cases, learn through observation and then learn through practice. And I like the example I use about bike riding. You know, you can't just watch someone drive a car and then just be able to hop in a car and be able to drive with it, right? You have to learn how to burn the clutch. Well, no one drives clutches anymore. But you have to learn how to steer. You gotta know how to reverse. So even as a child, you sing in a car for years. Still, you're not able to do the process. And so why that's important is I think a lot of times we, and I'll use collective we, as a family, we really get frustrated early in the process. And for a lot of the kids, it's not that they are unable to learn, it just takes them a longer amount of time. And so positive practice puts you in an aspect where you can really help practice the things that you really want to see. So especially if you have an older child that you start to get into emotional regulation, that type, it's best to work on positive practice when they're not upset. Because of course, as soon as they're upset, it's really hard to kind of put the genie back in the bottle. And so I highly encourage as many things as you want to get accomplished, almost all of them start with a practice. So if you can go in that mindset of saying, how can I help this practice, I really kind of shape in terms of how you can fix almost any behavior that you have. So the second tool is, and I like this slide, is trying to stay calm in the storm. And so of course, COVID is like this huge storm that's surrounding the whole world. But you know, in terms of dealing with special needs, dealing with parenting, you know, there's lots of these other type of storms that we're in. But we're working with a lot of families, and you know, I've been fortunate in my career. I've worked with a lot of parents, you know, so you know, I've kind of excited to kind of get back into the mode of doing these talks, kind of working with families again. But it's imperative that the more objective you can be, overall, that will help to a child to make more progress in a more efficient manner. And this really goes to anything in life.
Michael, excuse me for interrupting. What was it that you said? The more what you can be?
Oh, the more calm.
Oh, the more calm you can be.
The more
Yes.
calm you can be in this environment.
Thank you.
And objective, the better off. Because essentially your emotions affect your behavior. And so someone like me who is a behavior analyst, spending a lot of time observing behavior, it's really hard to make a good objective decision when you have your emotions kind of wrapped in and out it like a basket weave. So I always encourage parents, before you go to do an intervention, before you have to do something that is difficult, take that 1 minute to just breathe, center yourself, and just ask yourself one simple question. Am I calm? And if you're able to say, hey, right now I feel calm and in control, that gives you kind of that green light that you can handle whatever the behavior as it adjusts. But I see a lot of times is if you're already kind of, already on the tense, edge, and then behavior happens, it's really hard to take the genie's already out of the bottle for the child, and now the genie's out of the bottle for you. That's just, it creates too much things going in the environment, and it's hard to get things accomplished. So deep breaths. It always starts with that breath work. Number 3 is just really thinking about prioritizing things that are essentially fixable and doable. I think for all parents, special needs or not, there's just so much that happens in human development. And of course, you guys get to see it as a baby, as they grow up, and all the things that take place. And, unfortunately, we get into a mode when someone gets a diagnosis, parents, providers, schools, we always really just spend most of our focus on your child can't do this. This is what the limiting things are. Here's the things that you can't do. And we do need to address them. I think those are very important. But I really think we spend very little, or in some cases, not any time on what are the true strengths of your child. And I always look, and I think just for regular, humans, and I love to use regular examples and try to break them down. But early on, I wasn't really good at math. Math was not for me. The first time I took math and algebra in college, I failed. So it really, I struggled with it for a little bit, and it took me a while to get it to click. So if you took me in a setting and you put me and just back then just threw algebra at me, I'm gonna have behavior. I'm gonna really not like this class. I'm really gonna find a way to escape out of this activity because I just don't have the skills. On the other end, I love to write. And so, I look at, when you look at your child, yes, we need to work on the things that are not working, things that we need to improve on, but there are so many positives that we can build off of. And in many cases, when I'm working with parents, one of the first things that I do is really set up, we call it a strengths finder. We really try to isolate, okay, what areas is your child good at? What things that they have some potential skills that we need to improve? And in doing so, we actually work with those to teach the harder skills. And it really helps to, the child is more involved and happier in the process because they're not doing the things that are the most difficult for them. And then 2, for the family, it gives a different focus on how you want to approach helping your child. And also we need both. We need to really focus on what a child can't do, but we also need to focus on the areas of growth. And then the last thing of the big 4 is energy is everything. So in my opinion, we are just energy creatures in a physical shell, bound by the rules of this planet. But in watching many parents over the years and doing many interventions, this one continues to ring true. Meaning, I could give all the greatest behavior intervention plan ever. But if there's not enough energy to execute it, it won't get done. On the flip side, I can give you I'll call it I don't make fun of a fast food place. Which fast food place should I make fun of? I'll go McDonald's. I can give you a McDonald's-y level, behavior intervention plan, but if you have the energy to carry it through, in most cases, you'll still see improvement. So I've really started to, when I work with parents, my first question is, how much energy do you have? And once we can determine how much energy that you have, now let's build an intervention that goes off and helps you with it. And this is why this is important, is it gets the family to reflect and really think, okay, if I want to ignore this behavior, can I ignore this for 1 hour? Is the family environment set up that I can ignore this behavior? Am I gonna be patient and really work through this skill? And so if you don't have a lot of energy, that's fine. I'm not saying, and I didn't mention time, because if I put time, we all definitely don't have enough time. But energy is one of those things that it takes a conscious effort. It's an action verb. And when you see someone who's taking those positive steps, the success rate grows dramatically. And so I always think, before you want to do any plan, before you want to fight that battle, ask that first question of, are you calm? That second question is your energy meter. And I wish it was like a video game. You can look inside yourself and say, hey, I have this amount of energy. I have 83 minutes of energy left. Maybe in the future, it will take place. But have that in your head, and that will really help frame how you go about really helping behavior improve. So kind of think about those 4 things. They're very important to kind of lead to the stuff that we have going. All right, so now we're going to get into the big chunk of the talk. We're going to talk about communication and behavior. So when it comes to communication, behavior itself is a form of communication. And in my 20 years of being a behavior analyst, if you tell me what's the most important thing that I need to do more than anything else, it always starts with communication. Because communication is the lifeblood of how one human gets to communicate their wants, their needs, their thoughts to another person. So when you think about communication, just remember that communication is a lifelong process. We never stop learning how to communicate. And we see that in society when you go on Facebook and realize some people do not know how to communicate. Social skills too. So always, if I tell you to look at how to set your lens of how to help your child, always look through the lens of communication. And really trying to find stable ways that your child can A, communicate, have a functional communication system, and then B, that they grow in that. So taking a step back, if your child is able to communicate verbally, that's great. But if your child is not the most verbal, meaning they have 20 words or less, that's still okay. Just build in something else that they can use. So there's so much out there, and I'll talk about that in the next slides. But if your child can't do verbal, then try to find some sort of picture communication system. And there's plenty of applications that can apply there. If that might not be a good fit, just try about 10 to 20 signs. So some kids, we've taught the parents that they have about 20 to 30 words, they have about 20 signs, and they have about 40 different picture cards. And that's their entire communication system. And that really helps to reduce unwanted behavior. It really helps to organize and know what your child is able to communicate and not. So make sure that is kind of solid, that you have a good functional communication system. And if not, that's fine. Just kind of know of those 3, which horse are you going to essentially ride to kind of build upon. So the second slide goes with that technology. And technology is, going back to the previous slide about communication, I remember the old textbooks, the big binders where you have to like flip through to do things, which were functional. But man, these tablets are awesome. And literally, whatever pain point that you have currently, not just with your child, but in life, someone has made an app for it.
Right.
And I highly encourage you to go app hunting. Literally go online and start to look up You know, I want communication, help my child to calm down more, talking to people before the talk. Puberty, there has to be a puberty app. I haven't looked, but I'm pretty confident if you look up puberty, someone has done something on it. And why that's important is in my early days, it was really hard for me to essentially train a parent how to help their child, kind of doing those one-on-one, especially in those early days with autism. But now I just have to train parents how to use the apps. And that has streamlined the process in so many ways. If you're not, you know, the most tech savvy person, I do understand. I would say that if you want to stay young, stay up to date with technology, because that's what makes us old, is when we can no longer use the technology that surrounds us. But there's so much there in the technology sphere that can help with communication improvement, behavior. I love the voice of God, AKA Alexa and Google Home. And so if you have a kid that likes to raid the fridge, we had a parent that was, you know, had a camera on the fridge and they were able to see the kid going in and they can kind of be like, get out of the fridge.
That's a great idea.
And that was really a good way to kind of use technology in a functional way to kind of be that kind of voice in the sky. And then the last one, the voice season 374, is I love human universals. And there's currently, to my knowledge, not one culture in human history that has not used music as a teaching tool. So you can go anywhere. You can go to Japan, you can go to Turkey, you can go to London. And I mean, even the song, you know, London Bridge is Falling Down, which, by the way, is a terrible song. It was about a tragedy. And for a quick side note, most of the young kid songs are all about, you know, Ring Around the Rosie is about measles, mumps, and rubella. But that's how humans have always learned to communicate throughout human history, is through storytelling and music. So be the, you know, the opera singer inside of you, you know, channel your inner Britney Spears and just find a way to see if any music can be of use. So it could be anything, whatever music the family likes, see if you can find a way to help your child communicate more through those means. And at minimum, it gives you lots of practice. And it's highly reinforcing for folks. So when you look at communication, you know, it's all these little simple aspects, but I do think just incorporating some of these simple things will just help you evaluate where your child is, and more importantly, where they need to improve. And so covered the communication section, and then I'll go to the behavior section. And so as I go into behavior, just a reminder for the Q&A, because I kind of broke this into communication, behavior, and then I have a couple of tools to kind of take with, to kind of do to get ready for 2021. So let's talk a little bit about behavior. So as a behavior analyst, I spend a lot of time talking with teachers, talking with families, even I do work with businesses, doing some things outside of autism, working with HR companies. And I usually get to this part of defining the behavior. It is amazing that you'll take a family and you'll have a grandparent, you know, a mom, dad, and older sibling, and you'll say, okay, can you describe to me this behavior? How would you define it? And they're seeing the same thing, right? They're watching this kid have a tantrum, and I'll almost get 4 distinct definitions on what they're seeing. And it's really hard to build any game plan unless you know what the objectives truly are. And so I highly encourage is to, before you decide to do an intervention, define what the behaviors that you're looking to improve or to decrease. And so an example I like to use is crying. You know, there's lots of different ways that a human cries. You know, and I like to use human. It's so general to say child. As a child cries, you know, does a child cry with or without tears? Because I know some children who will, you know, scream bloody murder, but not one tear will fall out. Is it something that is short in duration? Is it just a burst and a scream? Is it like a sob? And those things are important because take the instance of the kid who's crying. If they're crying without tears, that might just be a behavior that we could ignore and, you know, kind of it'll go away. Versus if they're crying with tears, they may actually be in pain because there's tummy hurts or they just fell down. So a lot of times when you're looking at behavior, it's the intensity of the behavior that you're looking at. It's the duration, how long the behavior lasted. And then essentially the topography, or essentially how it looks. So let's take hitting, for instance. It's good to define if you are being hit with an open hand or a closed fist, because that's a determination. A reason why intensity is important is, you know, there's some kids that I'd rather have them hit me open-handed like this 80 times versus a 17-year-old who can hit me with a fist and pull back and hit me 3 times, right? One's a lot more damaging than the other. And so really when you think about what type of behaviors I want to improve or decrease with my child, or if you're a teacher, the kids I'm working with, you want to write down that definition. And you only need 2 sentences, 3 at the most, but really 2 sentences should define what you're looking at. It's really hard to define most things in 1 sentence. There's rare occasions, but start there. Because now once you define it, especially if there's a group of people involved, now you guys can look and have an idea on, okay, now that we're all seeing the same thing, now the intervention makes sense for a lot of people. It's amazing how sometimes there's just that disconnect, and it really starts at this section. So once you define your behavior, you have a good sentence or 2 that's strong, you want to kind of search for the function, kind of, you know, why is a kid doing what they're doing? And so I actually do a whole talk on this on its own merits. So I'll kind of gloss over the big aspects of it, and I can go over more detail if you want in the Q&A. But for the most part, most humans do these 4 behaviors for the things that they want. And so I'll go over each briefly and kind of go over, you know, kind of a little bit of the whys. Now, a human does all these behaviors. So this is not something that is just to special needs kids. This is us. Meaning some of you guys are attention maintain behavior. You like to be the center of attention. You want to stay in the middle of the room and you want to tell your stories. Some of you guys are escape. You do not want to be the center of attention. You want to stand in the corner and you want to leave as fast as possible. And so kind of think from that lens that this is really just humans and how we go about getting access to our wants and needs. So the first one is attention maintain behavior. And the first 3 are the most common, or essentially the first 2. But essentially attention maintain is people want attention, whether good or bad. So this is a teenager that says they want to be left alone, but argues with you for 2 hours on why they want to be left alone instead of just going to their room. This is the people that like to be the class clowns or just want to evoke a reaction out of someone. You know, when you tell a improper joke, it gets lots of attention. And for some people, whether it's quote unquote good or bad attention, you know, something that makes them feel good. Escape essentially is kind of the opposite. And so these are people that essentially they're afraid of an upcoming future that's usually unknown. So usually the kids who have transition issues, a lot of it's escape maintain behavior. I don't want to go to the next task because I like what I'm doing right now, or I'm not sure what's going to happen over there. So I see a lot with kids who don't have a strong communication. They tend to have a lot of escape maintain behavior because they can't communicate, hey, I don't want to be over there. And actually how they do it is they flop to the floor, they run out of the room. This could be avoiding doing certain work or tasks. So going back to that algebra example is when the teacher's giving them this homework, it's really hard and challenging. So instead, they rather just kind of flop or self-stim or something else to kind of make that work go away. We have tangible. And so that's kind of the straightforward of, I want this. And in a lot of cases, they want it quicker than you're able to give it to them. And so this is essentially when they're being impatient for what their reinforcer is. So there's a kid who cannot wait for dessert. They need to eat the dessert right now. They're not going to eat their meal before they eat the dessert. So it's really teaching your child how to wait is essentially what this behavior is, and reinforcing them of the appropriateness on why it's important to wait. And then the last one is the sensory. And so sensory is especially for a lot on the autism spectrum, but as humans, we all have sensory issues. So right now, some of you guys are tapping your feet and not paying attention, or you're playing with your hair, or some of you guys chew pencils, which is gross, but to each their own. So we all have sensory issues. We all are managing our senses on a day-to-day basis. It's just that we're socially aware of them to kind of know, hey, I need to kind of pay attention, someone's watching me. The first three have better interventions. This one's the hardest because the act of doing this is the reinforcer. So it makes it really hard. So usually for this one, it's really hard to get rid of the behavior. It's better to confine it. So for a lot of kids, we'll tell the parents, a kid can stim everywhere but in the living room. They start stimming in the living room, they have to go out. And then you start to teach that. And at some point, the kids start to realize it because they'll start walking around, and you keep moving them, they'll start to realize, oh, this is the no stim area. And so you could do that, and you can kind of grow it over time. Because I do think humans need the opportunity to be themselves. And I really think we shouldn't take that away from them. But at the same point, we need them to learn. If they're stimming all day, they're not learning. So instead of trying to punish this behavior, just try to find a way to confine it and pick the simplest way to look at it. So they're your four most common. If you want more, we can talk some of that in the Q&A. So there are a couple of things that I want you to take away. 4 things that I want you to take away to kind of actually set up. So I said some philosophies here, but let's say some things that are kind of concrete that I think would be in your best interest to do to really have that good 2021 positive game plan moving forward. So the first thing is you really want to set, some modest expectations of what success is. And so really those SMART achievable goals, and I think I'll talk about that here in a little bit. So what I would like you to do, actually, I think I put it here. Wait, where is it? Okay, well, I'll put it here. So I would like you to have one goal of behavior improvement. So pick one goal of, this is the behavior I want to improve to see in my child, or I want to decrease. Make sure that you define it. Pick one communication goal to improve. So I want my kid to communicate emotions, happy, mad, sad. I want you to tell me a story, or I want a child to be able to tell me when he needs to use the restroom. Pick one communication goal And then pick one of any of the other topics that are beneficial to you. So just pick 3 goals. We don't have to fix everything right away. I'm a big fan of keeping things short and simple. And then once you achieve, you kind of grow from it. So that 3rd goal could be a self-help goal for independence. It could be a social goal to play with their siblings more. It could be an academic goal to prove in an area. So there's lots of choices, to kind of choose from. But actually pick 3 solid goals between now and the end of March for 1 quarter. So just like how businesses do quarterly reports, kind of have that quarter goal of this is what the goal is, here's what I aim to do. You want to monitor the results. I love this slide because when I say the word data, something in people's brains to start to want to short circuit and kind of resist. But numbers are just numbers. You don't have to get too many crazy with numbers. Going back to how we define the behavior, that's what we get to measure. And so that's why it's so important to define it. It's easier to know what you're changing. So just pick 2 or 3 things to measure. And usually it's the duration of how long something lasted or the frequency, how often it occurred. Are usually the most common 2. Occasionally you need to grade intensity if you have an intense behavior, but just kind of think of simple ways to monitor it so you know where the success is coming from. And then to celebrate. Parents, teachers need to celebrate the steps in the journey. I like the quarterly goals because it gives you a way to celebrate when any child makes achievement. And it really helps to kind of know, hey, we're going in the right place. So celebrate, 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 and celebrate. Okay, I know I put it somewhere. So, and I think I touched over a couple of these. So going back to, yeah, there it is, the goals. Here's the SMART, and I will send to you, Judy, a copy of the presentation. So if anyone wants it, they can have a copy. But make sure it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So make sure all your things go along that vein. I talked about this already, but really focusing on the strengths and really, so start there. So I actually encourage parents, let's pick a strength to improve first before we work on a behavior to decrease. Because if I can teach you the process of doing it for something to improve, it's a lot easier to say, oh, okay, I can now just flip that and do it the other way. So I even encourage you to just start off with something that's positive. And if you're not sure where to start, always start with the 5 senses. All human input comes through what we see, what we hear, what we smell, which is an underrated reinforcer, by the way, what we taste, and what we touch. And so when you're not sure, just start with one of the senses and try to figure out, is your child really dominant in one or 2 or really weak in another? And that alone can give you an area to kind of work on. And all roads lead to independence. With most of the children, I see some middle schoolers and some young adults. If communication is the first thing that you do, everything else should always point to, does this make my child more independent? And that's the phrase you should always try to look towards, because that is going to have the lasting value to last that child for the rest of his or her life. And so always kind of think, you want to work on things that are really help for independence. Because sometimes the biggest roadblock of independence is actually the family structure. And sometimes we want to do too much for too long, and we really forget about the independence piece. And so as much as, you want to keep remembering is the intervention that I'm doing, is this helping for independence? Is this helping my child make the progress that they need? And the last thing that I have for you guys, since I am in behavioral wellness, and my company essentially works with parents, I now work with parents helping out their families, is every day or almost every day, find a time to fight. I should emphasize, fight for 15 minutes each day that you can decompress, that you can take your deep breaths, you can do some yoga. It helps to ground you. And humans, we need that grounding. Goes back to the energy thing. So this is, if you want that energy, you need these 15 minutes. Whether you need to wait till everyone goes to bed, you wake up early, you got to do it in the shower or on the toilet. Fight for 15 minutes each day to organize your day, stay calm in the process. And that's when I see parents that make the big changes and jumps, that's usually where I see it. So I'll stop the talk, presenting a slide. I want to open up for questions that you guys have of me. And I'll stop sharing here. And I'll send to you, I'll send it while we're here, but I'll send you the slide, Judy.
Great, thank you so much. You know, Michael, that was outstanding. You know, when my sons were growing up, Al Gore was just talking about the information superhighway. And so we didn't have the internet, you know, and you'd get, you know, thick packets of information. And you didn't have what you have today. So it's amazing that my now adult sons have turned out the way they have, considering I didn't have available to me what parents today have available to them. I'm so grateful for the information that you shared. And, you know, it's really interesting because I don't know if anybody on the call is a single parent like myself, but I've been one for 20 years. And there's no question how challenging being a single parent is, and being a parent is in general. When you mentioned about being calm, you're not going to be able to do it 24/7. We all have our moments, but you are so spot on when you say about being calm, because your kids, everyone around you picks up on that. No one can function well in the midst of heated arguments, yelling, screaming. And as Christina will tell you, we are all parent liaisons at Family to Family Network. We all do case management. And it's so challenging because I know that, you know, parents will say, I know I'm yelling too much. And I'm like, you're doing the best that you can.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard for parents and teachers as well to remember that when you yell, the people around you aren't hearing the words. They're hearing that tone, and they're just hearing the yelling. And behavior probably won't change, or has very little chance of changing, when somebody is yelling at them. And yet, that's often what people do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's kind of like the parent who says, or the teacher, I want you class to do this. And then they raise their voice a little louder and a little louder. Or the parent says, I want you to do this. I said no. I said no. And then they're screaming. So it's really, everything that you mentioned is just so spot on. So questions for Michael, feel free to either write them in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself. Also too, Christina and I both posted a link for SurveyMonkey. Please, please, please complete this link. It helps us grow. It helps us learn. And the day we stop learning, I say, is the day we stop living. I learn something new every day. And what Michael shared with me today was so helpful. And it really applies to all ages, whether or not you have a disability, no matter what profession you are in. This is just talking about human behavior and what makes us tick. So please fill out the survey, and then I will also share the link for the next program that we're having on January 6th. Dr. David Frey is going to be joining us. He is a UT dentist, and he's going to be talking about establishing a relationship with your dentist, because a lot of our population has a very challenging time with dentistry and oral hygiene for their loved one. So I'll post that in the chat box as well. Maria asked, great question, Maria. Is Michael available for appointments? I bet you are. Michael, go ahead and put your information in the chat.
I'm putting my information in the chat.
And I have a question when you're done.
Yes.
So you talked about, looking at my notes, you talked about doing the strength finders, and you also talked about, focusing on your child's true strengths and also starting with the strengths to improve before you focus on some of the weaknesses. How do you figure out what your child's strengths are if they're not as functioning? Like I said, I have 2 kids that are special needs. One's more functioning than the other. The one that I have the challenge with is in terms of finding his strengths is that he just likes, he likes to watch movies. That's his thing. He likes TV. And and he has a couple of other things, but I just want to I've been really trying to figure out what that is so that I can start to capitalize on those. So how do I as a parent think outside the box to figure out what their strength is?
So the good thing is, at least always going back to the 5 senses, when he's watching TV, is it the visual that he likes or is the audio? So I usually try to see which one is more dominant of why they're liking. So if they're watching a Disney movie, a lot of times it's a little bit of both. That's why Disney owns us all.
Isn't that the truth?
I tried that first, and then I want to kind of curious and saying, if you like this TV, why do you like this TV versus another type of TV? So I started to just kind of probe. So I kept probing different things. Eventually, most people start to get into, they like transportation stuff, all trucks and cars. They like animals, or they like kids. So keep trying to break it down. First the senses. Now let's think about the different categories. And in some cases, a lot of kids, their self-stimulatory behavior is really their. So if someone plays cello for 15 hours a day, we wouldn't call them special needs. We'd call them gifted and talented and a great cello player. I think a lot of our special needs kids, they do something for 15 hours a day. It's not culturally acceptable. So even in some cases, their self-stim give you some insight of what their brain is focused on all the time, and then use that as a way to teach things similar. So it's hard to go, if a kid, let's say, has a lot of body self-stims, I'm going to try manipulatives first. I want to keep their body busy. And in doing so, that will actually be a better way to at least, I'll start there and see how far I can get.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's a great question, Nisha. I understand your concern there. My son, the same movies, the same shows. And, but I have been told he's picking up something different each time. And he is learning something. And some of the shows he watches, I can't stand them. But they're so extreme in what they are, these shows, that I can teach him right from wrong. Like, this really doesn't happen in life, or, that person really is a bad role model. So as much as I dislike some of these shows, there are some teachable moments.
Okay.
And feel free to reach out to Michael. Absolutely. Absolutely. And Michael, it's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking of a family that I'm working with, and the light bulb went on, and I thought, I need to introduce you to them. And this is a young man, and it's so interesting when families say, and Michael brought up a really good point, if your child is verbal or not, that doesn't mean they can't communicate. There are so many ways to communicate. I used the PCS pictures for my children. My younger son, I should say, not my children, but for my younger son. Very, very helpful until language was emerging. Really, really important to carve out that time for yourself. I realize it's challenging. I completely understand. But you do have to, because as they say, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Janine, feel free to ask your question in the chat box, or you may unmute yourself.
Okay.
And we're so happy you joined us.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so this is kind of a unique situation. You were talking about universal human behaviors and music. I was a theater major, so right away I started communicating with my son through theater games and warm-up stuff. And his thing is humor, which I realize that's not really, he's on the autism spectrum. He's 11. He also has ADHD. He also sings a lot. And we've done a lot of positive reinforcement with it. He's really funny, but now sometimes it becomes problematic in school. Like, we had to have a meeting where there's a comedy rule of 3, like you set up the punchline, like boom, boom, bam. So he would give 2 wrong answers before he gave the right one. And we're like, no, it doesn't work that way in math. That's just being funny. And then also he would have that sort of exuberance where he would sing a question or he'd get overexcited. So I just kind of virtual, it's a little bit, he's still doing virtual school right now. So we're able to kind of, hey, that's not necessarily appropriate. But what would you recommend? Because I don't want to take that away from him because it's really great. But in those tiny moments, like I know we need to fine tune it. So how do you manage that behavior without restricting what he loves about it?
You don't want to crush their spirit.
Right,
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
I get it.
So you have both something that's attention maintained. Most people who are funny gravitate to attention maintained behavior. And they also almost have a self-stimulatory, because telling a joke has its own reward. It's something because you think it's funny. And so because you think it's funny, you don't care about the consequences.
Right.
So now that you know that there's some attention maintained component, and then you have a little bit of self-stimulatory automatic reinforcement, it's really trying to confine where and when to tell a joke. So it's almost saying in school time or when doing homework, let's keep the jokes out of there, but maybe the teacher can have him, if he's been appropriate, he could tell a joke at the end of class if he's been appropriate.
Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's really telling him when he can do it to confine it. So to confine where the jokes happen instead of trying to punish it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, anytime.
Great question, Janine.
Thank you.
Great question. And Nedra, I see you joined us late, so I'll be happy to send you the link so that you can see the entire recording because Michael had some really great information. Any other questions?
Thank you, Judy. I would much appreciate it.
You are so welcome.
I apologize to everybody that I missed it.
That's
but
okay.
Trying to play Santa Claus right now before it gets here.
I understand. Don't you worry. It's all good. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for anyone? For Michael? Okay, I will, please, again, the survey link is in the, oh, I'm so happy you enjoyed it, Janine. Christina and I both put the link in for the survey, and then I also shared the link if you would like to join us on January 6th. And when we're talking about building a trusted relationship with your dentist, Rosa Anna, so happy you joined us. And then Michael, I look forward to email introducing you to a family that I'm working with that I think would really benefit. And one of the things that I really love about what Michael does is it's tried and true. And it's been around for years. And I realized that at some point, you know, people had to, yes, we will send Michael's presentation to everyone. Absolutely willing, happy to. Is that this has been around, and this is not, as they say in Texas, Michael's first rodeo. So it's really wonderful to draw on his experience that he's had studying human behavior. And it's interesting because I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a social worker, I'm not a diagnostician, but it's basically what I do every day. And Christina and I, we are social workers, we're case managers, we're therapists because we listen and we care. And when you care, it makes a huge difference. And I can see that in Michael. And that is very, very evident. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm one of those not tech savvy people, but I have learned how to make this recording so that it is shareable. And but please do fill out the survey link. And Michael, thank you so much.
Anytime. I love you guys, and anytime you guys need me, let me know.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone have a great day, and we appreciate your time. Please look for the link and the PowerPoint, if not later today, tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, sometime in the next 24 hours, depending on my technological capabilities. But I should be able to do that. So many thanks to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day. Thank you.